To this day, there persists an idea that the ancient Druids are responsible for, or at least associated with, the stone circles in Britain, partly due to modern Druids who have become synonymous with the solstice at Stonehenge, but also due to an earlier misconception which has caught our collective imagination. During the Enlightenment, Britain's ancient and prehistoric past was vastly overlooked, with many British intellectuals preferring to study Greece or ancient Rome. To their minds, sites such as the Colosseum were far more interesting than places like Stonehenge, and during the 17th century, the prevailing theory about Stonehenge was that it was a Roman temple, but there were two men who could see beyond this. The first was John Aubrey, who realised that sites like Avebury, the Rollright Stones, and Stonehenge were not the work of the Romans. He realised there were no Roman remains nearby, plus the building style was completely different. They didn't use any mortar, and the stones were roughly cut, if they were cut at all. So he came to the conclusion that these sites must have been built by a great civilization that predated the Romans. Later, William Stukeley came along, and by measuring Roman sites in Britain, he figured out that the Romans always built in what became known as a pes, or a Roman foot. He then applied this measurement to Avebury and Stonehenge and found that they didn't match. He also noticed that the Roman road built by Silbury Hill had a bend in it to accommodate the mound, suggesting that the hill was older than the Romans. It was incredible detective work, and these two men provided incredible drawings as well as helping preserve these incredible sites. Aubrey was also inspired by Geoffrey of Monmouth, a medieval chronicler who said that the Druid Merlin had built Stonehenge. He knew it wasn't the work of magic, but it did strengthen his point of view. But Geoffrey of Monmouth is more of a fictional storyteller than an accurate historian. In the minds of the antiquarians, the Druids seemed like the best possible explanation. Both Stukeley and Aubrey had read about them in Roman accounts, which told of how learned, how powerful, and how influential they were. Stukeley had also noticed the solar alignments at Stonehenge and had learnt from ancient sources such as Julius Caesar that the Druids studied the cosmos. We now know that these large stone circles in Britain were built during the Neolithic age, and a few smaller scale circles such as Farley Moor were built in the early Bronze Age, many years before the Iron Age and the emergence of the Druids. They certainly didn't build stone circles, but did they worship at them? Ancient sources such as Tacitus tell us that the Druids worshipped in sacred groves of trees, and archaeological evidence supports this. There's no mention in historic sources of stone monuments, and there's nothing archaeological to suggest that they worshipped at stone circles either. They had their own complex and unique belief system separate from the Neolithic people. We know that some of the stone circles were used into the early Bronze Age, with the last rituals at Stonehenge being carried out around 1500 BCE, nearly 1,000 years before the rise of the Druidic culture in Britain. What the Druids thought of these stone circles is a mystery. They would have been just as mysterious to them as they are to us.